Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Physiology of Endurance Running podcast. Not a Road to Valencia series. It's been a bit of a while since we've had something that isn't just me, Owain and Jen talking about our training. But if you're watching the video, you'll see that Jen isn't here today. Owain, how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. How are you?
Good. We talk about ourselves all the time now, don't
Yeah,
we?
we don't
That's
don't
what I
need to
feel
do our
like.
catch ups anymore.
Yeah, let's just skip that. We were really grateful today to be joined by PhD student Elliott Jenkins, who's studying at Cardiff Met and has got some really cool research that's just been published looking at the effects of hot water immersion on hemoglobin mass and VO2 max. Some really exciting stuff. Elliott's also a great guy. Really into his running, which we go into a little bit. But it's just for us because we all used to be colleagues. Really nice just to catch up and have a chat about some research, just like we were in the postgrad room. That's what it felt like to me. What do you
Yeah,
think,
I did.
Owain?
Yeah, it did feel it did have that vibe, didn't it? It was
Yeah,
good.
it was good.
I think I mean we've obviously done loads of episodes interviewing people, but this one's quite cool because we were both participants in the study, um, and we saw a lot of it taking place, which is just it's nice to have that insight. And we sort of I think you realised sort of within a couple of minutes that you were doing the baths 2 years ago.
Yeah, I thought it was
So
a year ago, and it wasn't 2 years ago.
yeah,
Yeah, crazy.
show,
It feels like
shows how
yesterday.
shows how long it takes to get this sort of. I mean, this is a huge piece of work by Elliot. Like it's mad that he's managed to do this. So I mean, even like I sort of alluded to it, even just navigating, just sorting out getting access to the baths at Cardiff Met was a nightmare for me. So I can't
Oh,
imagine just
he had lots of
non-stop for
battles,
five
didn't
weeks.
he? Lots of health and
Yeah,
safety battles. And yeah, I mean, as a participant, it felt like it went on for a long time, and he had to go through that multiple times as a researcher. But yeah,
yeah,
he's got it published, and it's really good work, but also nice and it's really applicable, and we can take those findings and apply it directly. And I think just opens up the door to actually not having to be finding 4 weeks, 5 weeks to go to altitude to may or maybe not get a response, and actually much more accessible to use hot water immersion and jumping in a hot bath to get actually very comparable results, which is really exciting. And we don't need to go into details here.
yeah,
Elliott's going to talk us through all of his study, but yeah,
yeah.
really some really good work.
Yeah, and I guess worth saying. So the link to the paper will be in the show notes, and it is titled "Long Term Passive Heat Acclimation Enhances Maximal Oxygen Consumption via Hematological and Cardiac Adaptation in Endurance Runners," and it's in the Journal of Physiology. But yeah, we'll link it in the show notes. But yeah, that if you want to Google it as well, or probably just search like Bath's Jenkins paper, and that will probably bring it up.
Yeah,
Yeah, but no,
yeah.
it's cool. It's a really trending and contemporary and relevant topic as well. Like everyone's doing baths. There's all sorts of crazy sort of protocols floating out there on the internet. So it's nice now that there's a really quality paper showing some of what's happening when you're doing those sort of continuous bath sessions.
Yeah, definitely. So before we jump into chatting to Elliot, give a shout out to Saw. We've still got our competition running, so you can go to the link in the show notes or on our Instagram page, and there's a chance to win £250 in credit for their website. All you need to do is effectively sign up to their mailing lists, follow the link, and you could be in the chance of winning £250, which will be a very nice Christmas present. Pretty sure it's 7th of December. I think it closes, or maybe
Yeah,
is
7th of
that
December.
Valencia? The day of Valencia,
Day after Valencia, so maybe 8th of December.
8th of December. So there you go. That can be your reminder. But when you're watching the live stream at Valencia or you're running Valencia, you need to enter that day. Otherwise, you're not in the chance of winning. So yeah, go check them out. Also, lots of really nice new apparel coming onto their website all the time at the minute. Their autumn winter stock is on full flow there. Some really nice pieces. We've been stress testing some of them, and looking forward to putting in another order, I think, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely stress testing in some of the weather we've had recently.
Oh, it's been
Yeah,
bloody awful.
it's been
Awful.
grim, but I haven't chafed, haven't had any of that with the Sorget. it's all gear.
No,
So
it's good stuff.
yeah,
It's
pretty
good
happy.
stuff.
But yeah,
Right.
thanks, Saul.
Enjoy the recording. And yeah, thanks, Saul. Thanks to Elliott for his time.
So we're really excited to be joined today by Elliott Jenkins. Elliott is a PhD student at Cardiff Met University. He's not originally from Cardiff, though. He's from New Zealand. He did his undergrad in the University of Otago. Did I pronounce that correct?
Yeah, well done.
I guess my first question, actually, before we get into anything else, is moving from Otago to Cardiff is a big journey, big jump. What inspired that? Why did you move?
Well, the first thing is I've got a British passport. I was born in the UK, so I was able to move over fairly kind of easily. And then the other thing is my supervisor, who I was working with in New Zealand, he knew that I was keen to kind of get overseas, maybe do a bit more study after having not been able to travel during COVID. So he flicked a message out to a handful of his contacts, and one of the people that came back was my new supervisor over here in Cardiff, Mike Stenbridge, who sold me a dream of how great Cardiff was and the amazing research we'd do together. But it's actually worked out really well. So yeah, here I am.
I mean, you live in Pontcanna, so you are living the dream. That's like the third best place to live in the UK.
Well, yeah, top 5 coolest. Or there was some list I saw published recently.
You live within viewing or like eyesight of independent brewery, so that's pretty good. Yeah,
huge.
Living the dream. But yeah, you are a runner. You don't have many official results. But I think
you can't out me. Owain, you can't use this to out me.
I'm not saying anymore. But I think of your results, I think my favourite is Manchester Marathon. So you ran 2:53, but yeah. I mean, I remember I was saying to Dan before you jumped on it. I remember looking on your Strava when you finished, because I knew you were running. Looked on your Strava, and like you normally look on someone's Strava after a marathon, you expect to see like a bit of a blow up, if not a massive blow up. And I looked on yours, and it's 4:10 a k until 32k, and then you just decided, okay, I'm gonna start trying now, and you ran 3:55 a k to the finish, just flew past people. Managed
the final kilometer of like a 3:41 or something. So clearly didn't nail the pacing on the day. But it's always nice finishing a marathon with your legs feeling good. Especially that was my first marathon, like properly racing it. So. Yeah, I was pretty happy with that one. Although it didn't quite get me good for age quality into London, sadly. But there's plenty of time for that.
Yeah, I mean, like if you can pick up that much at 32k, there's definitely more in the tank.
A few more minutes left in the tank. Yeah.
So we wanted to chat to you because well, when this drops, there will be a paper authored by you. That looks at using baths or hot water immersion to increase hemoglobin mass. And we've talked about baths a lot on this podcast. It's probably a recurring theme most of the way through, I think. And essentially doing what your paper talks about, using them to increase hemoglobin mass. But I think this is one of the first papers to actually look at what happens over a long period of time. So it's 5 weeks worth of measurement and 5 baths a week. Dan and I were both participants. I think we've mentioned doing this, I think, a few times, but it was
just when we were started a podcast, wasn't it? Like properly when you came on. So I think I might have literally been doing a control arm of the study when we did those first couple of episodes, and that whole run into Valencia last year.
Yeah, I remember you trying to do a little bit, but then it didn't. You didn't push it all the way to the end, or
was it last year? Or was it the year before? It was 2 years ago now, wasn't it?
2 years ago.
Oh, blimey! Yeah. So that I think going into Valencia when around 2:15, I was doing baths all the way up to and post the marathon. That was my last measure. And I had to do a VO2 max test
and
5 days post marathon.
Quickly, that was a PB, wasn't it? First. At the end of completing my study, you ran a PB.
It marathon. Was, yeah. 5 weeks of hot bath, PB at the end. So
yeah, I won't take full credit, but I will take some.
You can take about 2.4%, isn't it? Is that the
Yeah.
is that the figure?
Something like that.
Yeah, so we were both participants. I think we'll come on to it in slightly different ways. I guess I experienced a lot more of the baths at Cardiff Met than Dan maybe did. But yeah, so yeah, we experienced it as participants as well, and it's something we talk about. We get a lot of questions about this as well, just using this, and I think it's definitely a really sort of contemporary stimulus that people are using. Like you hear loads of professional athletes talking about baths or saunas and using things like core sensors to track their heat acclimation.
Running
So
around
it's
St.
really,
Moritz in heat suits.
yeah,
That was the two Americans, wasn't it? Connor Manson, Clayton Young. Some good YouTube content there. Something you wouldn't have seen 5 years ago.
Mm.
yeah. I thought maybe a good way to sort of explain how the paper even came about is just maybe your PhD in general. And I definitely remember the way you explained it to me. But I think if I mean, maybe if you can explain, but sort of thinking about like the Ronstadt work, and that's sort of what underpins some of this, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think you guys are definitely right in that more and more athletes are just implementing heat stress into their training now. And I think, like a lot of things, this is one of those cases where research is just catching up to applied practice. But the kind of first movers, so to speak, on the idea of using heat acclimation over more than just a typical 2 week period were lab in Norway, Bengt Ronestad, and like Carsten Lumby, his group kind of really pushed this idea, where typically heat acclimation protocol ahead of competition in the heat. You're using it to improve your thermal tolerance ahead of competing in that environment. These guys thought, okay, what if we push that beyond that 2 week mark and start looking at? I think their first study was a 5 week intervention where they had their participants exercise in the heat. I think it was 45 or 60 minutes, 5 days a week for 5 weeks, and they were the first to show that hemoglobin mass increased across that time frame. So I was still over in Otago when this stuff was coming out, and I was just kind of starting to chat with Mike about potential PhD ideas, and saw that and really caught my eye of kind of, okay, people know about altitude training as a kind of environmental option for kind of getting these hematological adaptations, but if we can use heat, then that has its own benefits as well. So chatted to Mike and thought, okay, well, we can do this with exercise in the heat, but there are other modes of heat acclimation out there. And we decided to look at it from can you get the same adaptations from passive heat stress? So without interrupting your training, which is king, like that's crucial, can sitting in a hot bath for 45 minutes, 5 days a week, for 5 weeks, give you the same adaptations.
So in that original Ronstad's work and Carsten Lumby work, was that passive or active heat they were using?
That was active heat.
Okay, so that's quite different.
Yeah, all of their studies to date have been either exercise in an environmental chamber or wearing heat suits, or just even like additional thermal layers of clothing. But always push the kind of exercise within that.
And I guess again we've spoken about this before, but like the drawback with doing that is that you increase the intensity of the exercise because you have that thermal challenge, or you have to reduce
lower
the
your
intensity.
exercise.
Yeah, which for elite athletes you might not want to do. Like you know, if you're running your threshold session at 3:30 a k, you might not want to go and do it at 4 minutes a k. You know, that might not have the biggest physiological impact, but it's definitely going to impact how you're feeling about your training, and yeah, it's going to impact sort of your overall, I guess, like training lifestyle. So there's definitely drawbacks with the heat suit stuff, right? And that's, I guess, where passive comes in.
Yeah, I think the way that I think about it is anything like a heat acclimation going to altitude, that's the icing on the cake, right? That's the like you said earlier, Dan, like the 2% or like even smaller marginal gains. But your training is what's going to give you the biggest adaptation. So prioritize that, keep that as kind of to the quality and quantity as you want, and then add heat or whatever you're going to add on top as kind of the icing on the cake.
And I guess you're at the outset of sort of doing this piece, like massive piece of work. Like, we sort of mentioned it, but like Dan was in the bath 2 years ago, and the paper's just coming out now. Takes a good while to even just recruit people to, I remember thinking, like, I remember getting to like bath number like 4, and I was like, I've got 21 more of these to go. This is a long way to go. So yeah, like it takes a long time to do it, but sort of thinking back to like when you started, what was there? I wrote in my notes like, what was the current landscape for hot water immersion research, but was there any real landscape, or was there not really anything at that point?
Yeah, so like people have shown hot water immersion to be effective as a traditional kind of heat acclimation option. So that's kind of talking about your kind of 10 days to 2 week type timeframes. But no one had yet, kind of when I was starting out, thought about using it across 5 weeks. I say that, but then there are papers that look at it more from a clinical perspective. So kind of in more elderly cohorts and kind of around measures on kind of vascular function and just general kind of health outcomes, but not the performance side of things like we're more looking at. So yeah, I think we were definitely looking to do something that was a big undertaking. Like I was aware of that at the time. But if you had told me what it was going to take, I guess I started the project end of 2022, so or maybe midway through 23. So yeah, we're kind of a good 2.5 years odd into seeing it published, which is like super rewarding. But if you had told me that at the outset, I would have been, oh, surely we can do better than that.
Yeah, and I guess should we maybe sort of start talking through some of the method of the paper, because I think then we can pick apart some of the I guess like theory and what's behind what's going on.
Yeah, for sure.
Before can we start with just like, what was your research questions going into it? What was like the aim of this paper in terms of what were key questions you're trying to answer?
Yeah, so I guess kind of when you at that stage that exercise in the heat was effective. So the first kind of side of things was can passive heat stress kind of alongside normal training increase VO2 max after kind of implementing a 5-week protocol. And then what we added that kind of hasn't been looked at yet, and I know we'll come to this in a bit, was measures of cardiac structure and function. So what we did was not only did we measure hemoglobin mass and blood volume using kind of a technique called COE breathing, we also measured changes to cardiac structure and function using 4D echocardiography. So we had a sonographer scanning people's hearts before and after each of the 5-week blocks to see what changes were occurring kind of on that side of things as well. So the research questions ended up being one, can passive heat stress kind of effectively increase VO2 max after 5 weeks in a group of well-trained runners? And two, are those changes due to effects on multiple components of kind of convective oxygen transport? So the cardiac side of things and the hematological or blood side of things.
Nice. I guess like, I don't know if you want to just define like determinants of VO2 max quickly before we get into the depths of your paper. you happy to do
Yeah,
that for
yeah.
us,
So
Elliot?
the classic kind of thick equation is cardiac output multiplied by your kind of arterial venous oxygen difference, so the maximal arterial venous oxygen difference. So it's about how much blood your heart can put out, and then the difference in oxygen content that you send to the muscles, and then how much you get back. So it's about offloading O2 essentially.
Yeah, and I guess like altitude and now like heat is the idea, is but we're helping that oxygen carrying capacity of the blood part of the equation. But you can probably only increase that so much by training. But altitude has definitely been shown to increase EPO, increase hemoglobin mass, and then increase oxygen carrying capacity of the blood, and then translate into a better VO2 max. So can heat do that? And more importantly, can passive heat do that? I guess is the key part of your paper.
Yeah, for sure.
So what did you do?
I was gonna say the
Cool.
methods. Yeah. Do you want to talk us through this massive undertaking?
Yeah, okay. So what we did was we had two conditions that people would complete. So it was a crossover study. So to investigate whether 5 weeks of hot water immersion could increase VO2 max, we got 10 participants through the study, completing a, like I said, counterbalanced crossover intervention, where they did either hot water immersion 5 times a week, 45 minutes per session at 40 degrees or more, and a time match control. So they would complete the same level of training, but just without the hot baths, essentially. And then our measures, we had a kind of 2-day testing battery before and after each of the conditions. So on day 1 of that testing battery, we assessed echocardiography changes. So that's what I was talking about with the 4D echo. And we looked at changes to hemoglobin mass and blood volume using carbon monoxide rebreathing. On day 2 of the exercise testing battery was more the exercise component. So looking at those performance metrics of VO2 max, we did a lactate threshold test. We got exercise economy from that. So those happened pre and post the intervention, and then weekly throughout the intervention, we also got measures of CO rebreathing to look at changes in blood volume and the compartments of blood volume and how those things were kind of moving across the 5-week period.
And then I guess the baths themselves. So do you want to just talk us through the protocol for that as well? Because I think it's kind of useful to know.
I guess I've gone quite, it's quite, what I just gave was kind of the macro view of the study, but yeah, from the micro view, each individual hot bath, I played lifeguard for the participants, where we collected sweat rates, we got kind of perceptual sensations, so thermal sensation, thermal discomfort, and we got tympanic temperature kind of as a surrogate for core temperature. People were allowed to drink up to 500 ml of water across the 45-minute sessions. We weighed people pre and post so we could get sweat rate across the 45 minutes as well.
And then I guess
what's Owain, as a participant, how did you find the baths? Because I think people hear about them and go, 45, a bath 5 days a week, 40 degrees, that sounds quite pleasant. I don't know about you, but it was not pleasant.
It was pretty. I'd say it was tough the first week. Like I remember the first week feeling like really trashed. I remember like I was doing it at the same time as one of the other PhD students, Joe, and we were both just so hungry the entire first week. I think we sort of said like we're basically just adding an extra 45 minutes of like training a day. So you do need to maybe factor the energy needs of that in. And then I don't know, second and third week was okay, and then we were sort of like keeping the bath running to keep the temperature up, and we just
I guess one thing I didn't mention in that is I had an aim to give people a bit of progressive overload, kind of in the same way that you train a muscle group kind of around hypertrophy. I was thinking, okay, start people out at 40 degrees, but if I can get them up to a tub of 42 degrees by the end of the 5 weeks, then I see that as a way of them getting kind of progressive stimulus, where 40 degrees would be easy for them after a week of tubbing. So can we keep that kind of that thermal stimulus, that thermal load up?
Yeah, and that kept it hard the whole way through, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I think that you've got a graph on that, haven't you? Where actually people's, I think you got a table of results where I can't find it now, but basically tolerance didn't improve, did it? In terms of how comfortable people felt in the bath, didn't really change.
No,
despite...
so yeah, I guess a typical outcome of heat acclimation studies is for the same thermal load, your tolerance improves, but because we were progressively increasing that thermal load, tolerance stayed the same essentially. So people were feeling as equally bad, kind of at the end of every session.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I think you supervised my first 2 baths, and then I sort of did it by myself. But the first one, I was like, "Oh, this is hard, challenging," but got out and was fine. The second one was when we were in the baths in Nyack, and I think you had to rush off or something to a meeting, and I got out. I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine," and then suddenly, like, I couldn't see. My vision was blurry, and I had to go and lie on the floor in the change rooms for like 10 minutes until I could see again. I think, but I don't think I ever told you. I just said, "Go on, Elliot, go on, crack on, whatever you're going to need to do." But I was completely floored. That was like the worst experience. But then every other one was, hard.
Yeah,
but
definitely
not
the amount of venous kind of pooling that happens, or because you're so vasodilated, all the blood that's kind of sitting in your periphery, as soon as you stand up, you're right. Like your vision, your brain says like, I need to get horizontal again. So what's the fastest way to do that? So it's definitely a risk. And I guess we can caveat this. This is the only health and safety kind of that you'll get from me all podcast is please don't do this at home by yourself, at least initially, for that exact reason.
That's what I tell people. If you're going to try it, at least like the first couple of times have someone there, because you could so easily jump out the bath, faint, crack your head on the floor, and it wouldn't be a good experience. It's not going to help you run faster.
No, definitely not.
So I guess that's the sort of methods. But I guess I was just interested in general, like undertaking like research. This is quite hard, right? It's quite an intrusive study. Like, I mean, like we all just sort of approached it. I don't want to say we approached it as a joke, but like we were just like having fun. Like I did really enjoy the baths.
Definitely,
like,
I think it definitely helps that you and Joe completed them together, and there was a bit of kind of social as well as being part of the study.
Made it like a social club in the Nyack baths, I think.
Yeah. I like big time commitment from people. I think that was my biggest kind of barrier to recruitment is not only was this a 5 weeks of, I would see people 5 days a week for 5 weeks. And then after that, we had a 4-week washout at least, and then I'd get people back for the 5-week kind of control arm of the study, where I wouldn't be seeing them every day, but they'd be coming in every week for another CO rebreathe. So big time commitment, and really appreciative to both of you guys and kind of the rest of the participant cohort for getting stuck in with it.
Were you a participant?
I think it's turned into a really cool output.
Oh, definitely. Were you a participant in the study?
I was the pilot participant. I believe firmly as a researcher, you have to go through the research yourself before you're willing to put any participants through it.
Yeah,
I practice what you preach as well.
I was number one in mine as well. I thought like, I got some had some dodgy attempts at getting some blood from my veins as well. I think on I made them. I don't know. I don't think it was a mistake, but I had Elliott was in the first morning as well, and then Joe and Andy, a couple of the PhD students, And I just remember like there was 4 of us, and we weren't particularly efficient at 6:30 in the morning, sort of piloting mine. And I was just like, this is going to take so long. Like I'm going to have so, and then as soon as I get one participant who's just sits on the bed and it's fine. But yeah, I just remember, that first day piloting it, I was glad I piloted it, but I agree as well. Like I do think it's a lot easier to sell it to someone if you've done it and you can say like, yeah, I've done this, like this is what it entails. And the other thing I was going to say, and I don't know if you agree here as well, Dan, but like I definitely found for me, like I would mention needles, I would mention a bath, like, I'd mention coming back, or I'd mention those things and no one had any issues. It was the time commitment, which was the hardest thing. Like people were dead keen, like really, really like, oh, I really want to do this. I just don't have the time. I don't know if you found the same, Dan, as well, because people had to come back sort of every week.
Mine was quite intensive as well, in terms of a lot of visits. I wasn't taking, I was blood samples once a week, but early in the morning, and multiple exercise interventions. Not as tough as yours, Elliott, but definitely, it's definitely a challenge. I was quite lucky,
it's not something I would recommend to anyone just starting their PhD. Like that was my first PhD study. So for it to take two and a bit years to come all the way around was, I guess it's not ideal for your first one, but I guess the reward matches the commitment, the time commitment. So
but just going back to we are then collectively a third of your cohort nearly, aren't we? 10 out of 10. Is that right?
Yeah, like 30% of the data is on this call.
There was one other bit of methods that I wanted to touch on. I don't know if Dan wanted to touch on anymore, but the CO rebreathe. We're in danger of the UCI coming after us. But can you just talk us
pre-ban?
Yeah. Can you? I had a participant in when you were doing for my study when you were doing it as it was being like discussed, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what they're talking about banning. Can you just talk us through the use of like carbon monoxide and I think probably you're going to take a positive view on it. I think I do as well, but
So just I'll keep it super brief. We use carbon monoxide in research specifically for the measurement of hemoglobin mass because it has a really strong affinity for hemoglobin in your bloodstream. Carbon monoxide molecules will connect to them, or bind to them very easily. So if we give we sample someone's blood kind of at rest before they're given any dose, and we know exactly what it's called carboxyhemoglobin, so the percentage of your blood bound to carbon monoxide. If we measure that at baseline and we know what someone's hemoglobin concentration is, so per deciliter of blood, how many grams have you got? And then we give a known bolus or a known dose of carbon monoxide, and then measure the carboxyhemoglobin after that dose, after you've kind of rebreathed that same amount for, say, 5-6 minutes. We can then use that to work out, okay, how much now has that person got in their whole body in terms of hemoglobin. So it's a really clever method. But I guess what you're alluding to is because carbon monoxide binds to your hemoglobin so easily, and you can, just by breathing on it, you can really increase your carboxyhemoglobin. What this does is it also increases your EPO, erythropoietic response. So what cycling teams have been kind of called out for doing is rebreathing.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Allegedly. Is rebreathing this carbon monoxide just to get a hit of EPO kind of consistently.
Because your option
isn't super safe in terms of if you're doing it in confined areas, like bringing a tank of carbon monoxide into a confined space, probably not the smartest move. I can imagine team buses and things as very confined spaces, probably not the best places to do it in. But it has legitimacy as a research method, and that's what we used it for, at least.
Yeah, well, it's the only method we have of quantifying hemoglobin mass, and I think this is what people get confused about. Is in that hemoglobin mass, your total amount of hemoglobin in your blood, seems to be the key predictor of VO2 max, or the one that trends with VO2 max, whereas hemoglobin concentration doesn't correspond to the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. Is that right?
Yeah, bang on. So I can't remember who it was. Schmidt and Prommer, I want to say, showed that essentially for every gram increase in hemoglobin you have, it corresponds to about a 4 mil per minute increase in VO2 max, which
absolute terms.
Absolute terms.
Yeah.
Which is pretty meaningful. If you're a 60 kilo runner and you can get a say 30 gram increase in hemoglobin, that's 30 times 4, 120 mil, so an extra 2 mil per minute per kilo to your VO2 max is super impactful.
And I guess that's the gain that we're chasing with this work, isn't it? That's what we're trying to do with the BAFs. I think that's a good a segue to the results, I guess. So I guess at a high level, in terms of chasing that gain, did you find that BAFs worked?
Yeah, so I'm just going to pull up the numbers here because I don't have them committed to memory. But to give a rundown of the results, across 5 weeks of hot water immersion, the participants saw an average increase of 33 grams in hemoglobin, an increase of 280 mil in blood volume, and an increase in left ventricular end diastolic volume. So the size of your heart when it's the largest was increased by 10 mil in terms of volume, which ultimately all led to a 2.7 mil per minute per kilo improvement in VO2 max.
So yeah, BAFs work. There we go.
So,
we'll stop recording now, shall we?
Excellent.
Yeah. I mean, that's very significant, isn't it? And that's going to be into the realms where you would expect to see a performance improvement with that, right? Because we always talk about, is it a meaningful difference, don't we, in terms of applied work? 2.7 must be into that bracket.
Yeah, so I guess like one of the limitations of my study in terms of extrapolating to performance is we didn't actually get a kind of performance metric of being a time trial or kind of a work trial or whatever else. But we did see an increase in treadmill speed at VO2 max is probably our closest kind of performance metric we've got. But I would say you wouldn't be opposed too much if you told an athlete, hey, 2.7 mil increase in VO2 max is going to make you run faster. So it's a really, really good finding.
And how would it compare to altitude, which I guess is the obvious comparison?
So that 33 gram increase that we saw is comparable to a number of studies that utilize your live high, train lows across a 3-4 week period. I don't have the papers or the numbers kind of off the top of the dome, but the hematological adaptation as far as hemoglobin mass is concerned is fairly comparable to what you'd see post altitude, and then performance or the VO2 max is always a weird one because kind of inherently there are a lot more there's a lot more variability in that measure, but certainly the 2.7 mil increase that we saw is kind of right in line with that kind of for 1 gram of hemoglobin mass equaling kind of 4 mil per minute add boost to your absolute VO2 max. So the numbers kind of all add up nicely.
And I guess going back to where we talked before about like the Fick equation and some of the heart scanning, what did you see? What did you see in terms of like cardiac remodeling across the study?
So the value I gave kind of left ventricular end diastolic volume is the biggest your heart, your chamber is kind of across a cardiac cycle. So that enables a greater stroke volume, which is just one of our the variables that impact what is ultimately our cardiac output, which, as we said before, is what feeds into your kind of VO2 max or Fick equation. So the I think we saw, I want to say 9 to 10 mil, might be less, increase in stroke volume across the 5 weeks, which for the same kind of exercising heart rate is an increased cardiac output for a given exercise intensity, which is obviously super beneficial. I don't need to tell you guys that. Yeah, and the reason we think some of those adaptations are happening is you expand blood volume like we did. You increase what's called kind of your venous return, or the blood that's coming back to the heart, and that then increases preload, or the stretch of the heart kind of during diastole, which then helps facilitate that bigger stroke volume. So it's kind of a nice full loop, or kind of closed circle that kind of tells the story.
And what's the mechanism, do you think, behind the increase in hemoglobin mass? Because there's quite a few theories, aren't there? What are you going with at the minute in terms of
so I think we've had this conversation a handful of times, Owain, in terms of there is a lot of different thoughts on what's occurring. My kind of view now, after kind of having read literature and then seeing what's gone on in my own study, is it's more to do with the crypt meter theory, or plasma volume expansion that happens across the first couple of weeks. Essentially, is or what it does is it decreases your hematocrit, so that's the proportion of red blood cells to whole blood in your body, and then that in turn is kind of read by this little sensor in your kidney, which then synthesizes EPO to get your hematocrit back to a kind of optimal set point, because it recognized that as too low. What's optimal is going to be different for everyone, but essentially it's going to be at a point where your oxygen transport is optimized without kind of overly increasing your blood viscosity or making your blood too thick. A lot of people think if I just get more red blood cells, I'll be able to carry more oxygen, it'll be great. But that also comes at a cost of making your blood thicker, which actually slows its kind of transport around the body. So there's a optimal point where your blood's thickness is kind of where it needs to be, and you have the right content of kind of oxygen, or your oxygen carrying capacity, because of red blood cells is kind of at a nice bell curve top of that point.
Yeah, I used to hear stories of, or you'd hear stories in the media of all cyclists in the 80s and 90s would have a hematocrit of 49.9, because if it was 50, you'd get done for doping. But then you'd also have people worried about having clots in the night because their blood was so thick, and they'd be setting alarms for like 2 a.m. to walk around because they've just got
crazy.
such a high hematocrit that their blood is basically tar. It's basically treacle. Not ideal.
I guess we've mentioned it in passing, but I think one of the really nice things about this paper, and I've seen you do other figures as well, is the figures. Like you're really good at doing figures, Elliott. And I mean, like we said, we'll put the paper in the show notes and on socials, but it's you sort of mentioned it, the increase in plasma volume like really quickly, and then the sort of concurrent decrease in hematocrit, and I think you sort of show that really nicely. But yeah, I don't know whether it's just worth touching on sort of that mechanism, because that's sort of at play with the like heat acclimation like the previous work people would do. If you're going to play the World Cup in Qatar, you go do like a 10-day camp. And yeah, just are you just okay to quickly talk through sort of the time course of these hematological changes, because
Yeah,
I think that
absolutely.
underpins a lot.
Absolutely. So I guess if people have the paper up, the figure that we'd be talking to is figure 3. The kind of time course part that Owain was talking about. So typically in those traditional heat acclimation protocols, we'll call them, where people are preparing for exercise in the heat, they'll get kind of say 5 to 10 days in, and their plasma volume expansion, or the kind of the fluid or watery part of their blood, is at a peak, essentially. Like they've got that side of the adaptation, and that's going to allow them to increase sweat tolerance. They'll sweat at a lower core temperature. Their overall thermal tolerance will be lower. Their heart rate will be lower for a given kind of intensity in the heat. So that's typically what's been done. What we saw is across kind of after that 2-week point, plasma volumes tends to drift back towards baseline, but because we've kind of reached this maximal plasma volume after those first 1 to 2 weeks in people, that's then initiated an increase in red blood cell volume, which we can see pretty clearly from week 3 onwards all the way through to week 5. And what that does is, like kind of Owain was saying, initially it's more of a U-shaped curve in hematocrit. So the initial decrease because of the plasma volume expansion, kind of after 1 to 2 weeks, your red blood cell volume expansion is starting to catch up with that process, and increases your hematocrit back to close to where it was, essentially that set point that you've got, which I think is what's kind of going on in terms of helping create that increase in hemoglobin mass.
Yeah, and I think like just having a look at that figure like just really shows sort of these 4 different things and how they interact really nicely, which I quite like. It then like illuminates sort of what's going on over a period of time with these different sort of things, and their interactions.
No. There's some really nice data, and it's pretty convincing, isn't it, in terms of the effects of passive heat on hematological variables and VO2 max and probably performance as well. Should we move on to talking about how we actually apply some of this? I mean, like one of my first questions was just what was the individual response like? Did you have like non-responders and hyper responders, or was it all quite uniform?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of individual variation, as there is kind of with anything. I don't think anyone decreased. Maybe there was one person who decreased VO2 max across the 5 weeks, or roughly kind of stayed the same. And then there were a couple absolute super responders had a kind of a monstrous VO2 max increase across the time period. The individual variation or the responder non-responder thing is something I'm curious about, and I don't think is kind of well understood. And I know we might talk about kind of where to next in terms of research or kind of questions that I have. But one of those is whether there's a way to identify whether someone will be a responder or non-responder from a acute bout of heat stress, instead of having to go through 5 whole weeks to discover, that's not done anything for me. Is there a way for us to figure that out much earlier down the line?
Yeah, I mean, like looking through your graphs, it's really nice. You've plotted the individual responses, and I sort of feel like VO2 max, as we know, is influenced by so many things outside of just the heat stimulus. But maybe that's more open to variation in response to training. But your hemoglobin mass increase, I mean, everyone eyeballing it was increased their hemoglobin mass, and
everyone saw an increase in hemoglobin.
What was that? Sorry,
everyone saw an increase in hemoglobin. Not yet, but the changes in LVEDV, not everyone saw the big increase. There was, like I say, a bit of variation across the 10 people.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, you'd expect that you'd expect probably even more variation in response if you went to altitude, for example.
Yeah, I guess I guess you sort of alluded to thinking about it. Where do you, or what do you think would be like, what would be the immediate follow-up study you'd do to this if you wanted to do another 2.5 years of of data collection about this?
Yeah, I'm not jumping at the thought of doing another 5 week long plus an intervention in people.
Someone else can do it.
Yeah, that's I've laid the groundwork. Someone else can take that away and run with
That's
it.
your project, Owain, I reckon.
Yeah.
I've had to deal with sorting out Nike bar, so I'm good.
Yeah, playing lifeguard's not for everyone, I suppose. Yeah, so I guess my own questions from here. I've still want to pour more into kind of mechanisms at play. I think it's trickier research to do, and maybe not as kind of immediately impactful for everyone, but also knowing what's going on or what's causing adaptations is beneficial in terms of, okay, we've got proof that this is happening and kind of the pathways involved. So yeah, mechanisms at play I'm more interested in. From an applied perspective, I'm curious on kind of whether there's an optimal dose. We pulled 45 minutes and 40 degrees from previous research, but I think they were also pulling from previous research, and everyone's just kind of going along this line of what's been done previously. But whether there's can I get the same bang for my buck with a smaller session? Can I just go hotter for shorter? Can I do less than 5 days a week? Or if I do more, will I see a bigger kind of outcome? So kind of dosage as a interesting one for me. And then also I mentioned the variability. Kind of still stay on the modes of heat thing. I'd like to see kind of a mixed modality study. We've talked about hot water immersion now. We've talked about exercise in the heat, but whether sauna can produce the same outcome as well is still to be seen.
I guess, yeah, the dose thing is something like I've like trying to write up my stuff. Like I keep coming back to, because like I've only got one bout of hot water immersion, but just seeing you pick a measure like sweat rate, and the if you use that as the dose, then there's a huge range of what people got. If you go like by like fluid loss, then again it's the same. If you go by core temperature increase, it's massive as well. So yeah, like I don't know, you'd have to like you'd have to pick one and clamp the dose, wouldn't you?
Yeah. The fluid loss point is interesting. I'm not sure if you've read it yet, Owain. Carsten has a new review out on kind of altitude and heat training for.
Yeah, I've had a read. Yeah.
And for anyone listening, I really recommend reading that one as well. It's done in a very kind of conversational way of writing that academic pieces of literature usually aren't. So it's a really kind of nice, easy read. But they mention that they when they kind of set these studies up for people, or if they're working with athletes, they recommend aiming for 1 kilo of fluid loss across the session, and maybe a little bit less for someone lighter and a bit more for someone a bit heavier. But then they go off kind of athlete feedback, which I think is an interesting way of kind of looking at it. But like you say, kind of because of the individual variation, you can have someone like Dan who sweat like 2.5 liters an hour, kind of at the top end of the 5 weeks, versus someone who barely sweats at all, and kind of your overall timeline might look a lot different.
I've always been a good sweater. It's definitely one of my key attributes in terms of sporting context. Maybe not for Jemima, but it'd be interesting also to see the trajectory of if you did it for. I know there's been awful studies to do, but okay, we extend it to 10 weeks. does that just plateau, that hemoglobin mass, or does it continue to trend upwards?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think naturally there should be a ceiling to this stuff, but I know that there's some data that's come out of I think it might even be Paul Roebuck's group, who's kind of saying that in a group of people who lived in the tallest mountain in Antarctica. I think there's a lab up there. Can't remember off the top of my head. They stayed there for a year, and they did kind of regular hemoglobin mass measures, and they're showing across the whole year you're getting a slow increase at altitude. So whether the same thing can occur if you, like you say, you just let a heat acclimation and throughout your whole training year, what does that look like in terms of your total magnitude of adaptation? Yeah, it's a really cool question.
Yeah, I mean, carrying on that comparison to altitude, there's obviously advantages of heat versus altitude in that you can do it from your home. It's accessible to anyone who's got a bath or access to a sauna. And also you can remove the stimulus immediately. So if you're stuck up a mountain and you think, actually, I'm getting a bit overtrained here, I need to reduce just some general stress, then you've got to find somewhere to live down the mountain. Not quite so easy to do.
Yeah, I'm a big pusher of kind of heat acclimation over altitude currently, I guess for obvious reason. But also, I think lots of drawbacks at altitude. The individual variability in response is large. We know about that. Yes, the same thing could happen with heat, but at least you've not invested as much. The time, the cost, the environmental impact. If you're an athlete in the UK and you're flying across to Flagstaff or Fontmoreau or these altitude locations, that has a big kind of carbon emission associated with it. Whereas sitting in a hot bath is just using kind of your gas from home or electric. So much smaller on that side of things. The sleep quality at altitude is bad. We know how important getting good sleep is for recovery. There are a number of drawbacks of altitude that I don't think are associated with heat, and then additionally there are a number of benefits of heat that aren't associated with altitude in terms of all the typical heat acclimation outcomes of lower resting core temperature, improved sweat rate, and the likes. You don't get with altitude. So I think just the case is kind of growing for heat to be utilized more than altitude and kind of the elite population.
I guess,
and definitely in the kind of your weekend runner as well. Like if you're someone who's maybe trying to push for a sub 3 hour marathon, and you've got kind of the opportunity to sit in a hot bath after you get home from a run each day, like could give you that little bit extra as well. So it's not just for your kind of top level athletes.
I guess the other thing is that you've got to modify your training at altitude. You can't run at the same velocities, the same speeds. You can't hit the same intensities. Or if you do hit the same intensities, it's not going to, the speed is going to be lower. Whereas because you've demonstrated such a good response in terms of passive heating, you can effectively just continue your training as normal. Do you think there is a lot of extra recovery stress associated with it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't recommend to anyone. I'm not sure if either of you guys did this when you were participants, of having your bath first and then training afterwards. I personally had to do it once, and it was horrendous. So I would never do it that way around, because you're jeopardizing your training stimulus, which, like I said, is kind of that should be kept king. Another part of my study that we haven't mentioned is kind of sent out a questionnaire that I got people to complete daily, that had questions around general feelings of fatigue, muscle soreness, general mood state, stress levels type thing. And across the 5 weeks of heat and across the 5 weeks of the control, there was no difference in any of those variables. So more or less people felt the same, and I think they probably felt that they got the same quality of training that they did in the control arm as they did in the hot water immersion arm.
It definitely, you know, as a participant, like it definitely felt like once I learned what I needed to do to not necessarily enjoy the baths, but not be like smashed by them, then it wasn't a arduous task in terms of I didn't have to do too much. I did have to consciously like make sure I'd eaten before I got in the bath, and you drink a lot through the day. But it wasn't anything too strenuous once you figured it out. And I don't think that's any different to like where I started doubling a lot more. And it's like I have to be really conscious about eating enough during the day. Like
See,
you do have to.
yeah, I definitely felt that I need to drink more, and I was often doing them quite late in the evening after I'd put Nye to bed, so I was not hydrating, and I'd wake up in the morning feeling bloody awful. But I didn't feel like I needed to eat more. Maybe I just didn't notice, but I just subconsciously ate more. But that's not something that I felt. But obviously, you and Joe did. So
It was really that first week. And just after that, I was fine. And it was as much as anything, like I quite often was running like in the morning, and then we would like go do the bath like mid morning to like lunchtime ish. And I just had to make sure I ate between, like, I think I did one where it was quite a quick turnaround, and you just feel like you're completely crashing. Like you just have no energy to even like get out of the bath. So yeah, it's just, I mean, that's the sort of thing you would want to do if you're at home doing it by yourself, right? And I mean, that was going to be one of my questions was, is there a way to sort of like, if someone was like, yeah, I'm all in for this, I want to start doing this, is there a way you would recommend sort of starting out, or any thoughts on applying it?
Yeah, I think I guess one of the things we haven't talked about is the beauty of heat acclimation as well. Like I've mentioned using it as a progressive stimulus in terms of increasing the temperature. But if you're just starting out and say you get 20 minutes into a 40-degree bath and you say, oh, actually I can't hack it, hop out. Like you're good there. The next time you hop in, you'll have developed a bit more tolerance, kind of session on session. So initially, you can aim for just getting to the point of discomfort, like I can't do this anymore, and then you can start playing with okay, let's change the temperature. Let's make sure I sit into my shoulders for a bit longer this time. Let's kind of look at other things I can change. I think to an extent I agree with the recommendation from Carson based on his recent review in terms of if the crit meter is what's going on, and I think I'm kind of behind that idea now, then fluid loss is what eventually drives your plasma volume expansion. So within each session, as you sweat, you're getting this plasma volume contraction, which then rebounds, and you get a plasma volume expansion that happens after the tub. And it's the kind of accumulation of that across 1 to 2 weeks that gives you the ultimate plasma volume expansion, which then might drive that kind of crit meter response, like I talked about. So making sure that you're weighing yourself pre and post tub to look at kind of changes in body mass as a kind of way of looking at your fluid loss across the session. Most people have scales at home type thing, so that's shouldn't be a barrier. But yeah, I think if you're just starting out, you don't need to push yourself right to 40 degrees, 45 minutes kind of off the bat. This is something that can be gradually increased across over time.
what do you think to combining heat and altitude as a stimulus, either like in sequence or at the same time in parallel?
Yeah, so the second study of my PhD has been a post-altitude heating intervention. So we went to 3,800 meters, which is much higher than any athlete would go, but it was kind of part of this wider research expedition. And after the exposure at altitude, we had kind of a roughly, I think it was 25 gram increase across the group in hemoglobin mass. And then we split off, and half the group did hot baths, and the other half just kind of descended as normal. And the hot baths were able to retain the hemoglobin adaptation versus the control group who reverted back to baseline. So it's something that you can use, and I think Carson Lungby's group has shown as well. It might be more than a Ronestad paper, but that you can use exercise in the heat 3 days a week after coming back from altitude to maintain the gains that you've got up there. So I've seen people use it after altitude. I've not seen anyone use it before going up to altitude, and I don't know whether I've read a study that has used them both simultaneously. My instinct with that is you'll be throwing too many things at the body at one time.
Yeah.
Particularly when altitude and heat have opposing effects on plasma volume, in terms of when you ascend to high altitude, you get plasma volume contraction. But as we just talked about, heat acclimation wants to give you plasma volume expansion. So kind of how those signals mix to then ultimately drive your hematological response, I'm not sure. But my instinct is that you'd be trying to do too much at once.
Yeah, I guess one more like practical recommendation is would it be worth getting iron checked before you did the hot water intervention, or because I guess you need that ferritin availability to create new red blood cells. Red blood cells.
Yep, if it's something that comes easily and you can do that, yeah, I'd recommend it. I'd say it's good iron stores are something that you'll need to see this adaptation. Yeah.
Nice. I didn't have any more questions. Did you have any more, Dan?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's really cool. I think the takeaway for me is it's just an exciting way to get that hemoglobin mass adaptations without all the downsides that come with altitude. It'd be interesting to see if people just stop going to altitude.
Yeah, I don't know whether that will happen anytime soon, but hopefully it can kind of influence more and more people.
I think there's a few people doing it. I mean, like, I don't think this is the only reason, but I know like someone we've chatted to, Phil Sessamon, saunas a lot, and he trains at home in Leeds. I know a lot of that is based on being at home. He likes being at home, but I think if you can stay at home in your own environment and you're in control of everything, and you can add this, so you're not actually really missing out on much, then I think more people will maybe do that.
Yeah, I think there's still you're always going to see a training camp effect, right? Like whether it's just a coach spending quality time with an athlete in a new environment. I think that naturally has an effect on an athlete's performance. But whether you can just do that by going to somewhere hot instead of necessarily somewhere high up. Yeah. So I think there's probably still a place for it, but my view is heat acclimation all the way.
Get yourself in the bath.
I'm thinking I've got 4 weeks till, what was it, 3.5 weeks till
Valencia.
I was start jumping in my bath.
I was about to ask, have you started implementing? I know you got Valencia coming up.
I haven't done it this time.
Not this time around.
It's just a time thing, like you said. I mean, you got to prioritize for training, and then something's got to give. If I was an elite athlete and I had nothing else in my day, I would be in my bath 100%. Maybe next time.
See how you get on.
Yeah, exactly. That's just leaving room for Valencia 2026. You see.
Nice. It's a staple on the calendar.
That's it. Yeah. When's your next marathon, Elliott?
I'm starting to get that itch again. I don't know. I'll look at see what races. I'll be keen to do an international one next, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for your time, Elliott. It's great to hear from you.
Really appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Thanks for chatting. The paper will be in the show notes as well. But yeah, cheers for joining us, Elliott.
Thanks, guys.